In light of the recent shootings that have taken place, Pete Buttigieg decided to do the worst possible thing and decide to start a war on domestic terror. Yeah, that sounds just absolutely fantastic, doesn't it? Because we all know that every time we called for a war on something, remember, war on drugs, uh,
Unintended
war on, huh?
actually, the consequences were like they were intentional.
Oh
I,
yeah.
I yeah,
Well, that's what we're gonna get into.
yeah.
And the war on terror, once again, consequences were, they were intentional. And yet Pete Buttigieg is calling for a war on domestic terror. He put out a plan, and for those of you who are familiar with the 94 crime bill, uh, you're gonna love this. All right, let's look at some of the things that go on that he talks about in this Medium article for his domestic terrorism plan. It says that he wants to dedicate $1 billion to prevent and combat radicalization and violent extremism. That is super general. Let's see what he's talking about. He says the Trump administration cut funding allocated to the Department of Homeland Security to combat white nationalism. We must do more than that. Or excuse me, we must do more than simply reinstate that funding. We must dedicate $1 billion to ensure that law enforcement across all agencies and all levels have sufficient resources to counter the growing tide of white nationalist violence. Uh, Hold up, really quick. Did he just say give $1 million to law enforcement? You mean the law enforcement with the tanks and shit? That they like the law enforcement that's walking around with M4s and body armor? What's the point of why are we giving law enforcement that much money when they get to the damn white terrorists, the white nationalists, or whatever you want to call them, and they take them to Burger King? They take them to Burger King when they can. We giving them all this money. What? Buy the motherfuckers a bunch of Whoppers? Is that what we get them? Nah, they gonna use it to kill black people. They're gonna use it to kill black people. I just want you to know that. I don't know if you've seen that pattern, Pete. I know you've been kind of closing your eyes to what's been going on in your own town, but they're gonna use it to kill black people. We've already seen this. And what's even more interesting is the organization that he is talking about that is quote unquote cut funding allocated to the Department of Homeland Security to combat white nationalism. That department or that agency, uh, he ain't being honest about that situation as much as he should be. Sophia, what exactly is he leaving out when he says Trump cut funding?
This is according to PolitiFact. They actually did good work here. They don't usually, but anyways. So it says Buttigieg was referring to an Obama era grant program called Countering Violent Extremism. One group founded by former white supremacists and neo-Nazis, Life After Hate, was slated to receive money under the grant, but the offer was rescinded under Trump, Buttigieg said. So the actual reality was that it was a 2-year grant program, but then they decided to not reinstate it.
Mm-hmm.
But the interesting thing about this entire program is that it was actually criticized, even under the Obama administration, as focusing too much on Muslims and immigrants. So nearly all of the accepted projects, it was targeting Islamic extremism rather than extremism as a whole, including white nationalism and domestic terrorism, rather than foreign terrorism. So that's kind of the irony of it all.
So basically, with the money they did get during the Obama administration, this organization that he wants to give more money to didn't actually go after white nationalists at all, which probably explains all the killings by white nationalists. They went after Muslims who didn't do anything. I mean, by and large, didn't do like how many terrorist attacks have we experienced since 9/11? How many like mass shootings have we experienced since 9/11 from Muslims? I think it's like 3, 4. I think not even. And I wouldn't even consider them mass shootings. It's like 3 or 4 people may have gotten killed, which of course one is too much, but that's not what we're not seeing a Muslim going to a church and just shooting up the entire church, by and large. So so basically Buttigieg is being dishonest in trying to use Trump. It's it's that fear-based authoritarianism. He is trying to assert that, oh, Trump cut the funding to white nationalism, so if you give more funding to these authoritarian agencies, they'll get the job done right this time under me, just like they got it done under Obama, even though they didn't get the job done under Obama. So the next thing that Buttigieg says is that he wants to empower the law enforcement, including the FBI, the state, and local authorities, with greater resources for preventing domestic terrorist attacks before they occur. More than 70% of international terrorism arrests occur before violence takes place, according to Buttigieg. The domestic terrorism, or for domestic terrorism, the opposite is true. 72% of arrests occur after the violent acts. He says he wants to also increase the FBI's domestic counterterrorism field with strengthening ties to the state and local authorities so that our law enforcement agencies can work together. Yeah, it sounds actually scary as hell. It says he wants. Go ahead.
I just wanted to. I actually was reading this article, and it was. I wanted to see what the FBI defines as domestic terrorism, right? So then it says it defines domestic terrorism as acts perpetrated by individuals and or groups inspired by or associated with primarily U.S.-based movements that espouse extremist ideologies of a political, religious, social, racial, or environmental nature.
Yeah, yes.
That is extremely vague and.
Oh no, you wanna know what it means? Hold on, I'm gonna find the article real quick. You know what that sounds like to me? Because this, mind you, this is what Buttigieg wants to give money to. This is in Newsweek. This is 3 days ago. FBI ranks Black identity extremists a bigger threat than Al Qaeda and white supremacists. Leaked documents just show. Leaked FBI documents indicate Black identity extremists and animal rights activists are among the agency's top counterterrorism priorities under Donald Trump. The FBI's priority list, obtained by the Young Turks on Thursday, lay out the Bureau's 2018 fiscal year focal points in counterterrorism, cybercrime, and counterintelligence. Oh, yeah, but it gets better because, funny enough, the FBI itself actually warned all law enforcement agencies that white nationalists had infiltrated the law enforcement at a very high rate. In a 2006 bulletin, according to PBS.org, the FBI detailed the threat of white nationalists and skinheads infiltrating the police in order to disrupt investigations against fellow members and recruit other supremacists. The bulletin was released during a period of scandals for many law enforcement agencies throughout the country, including a neo-Nazi gang formed by members of the Los Angeles County Sheriff Department who harassed Black and Latino communities. Similar investigations revealed officers and entire agencies with hate group ties in Illinois, Ohio, and Texas. And that is who Pete Buttigieg wants to give billions of dollars to. And it's interesting that he doesn't say anything about this particular aspect of his little plan. And what's even worse is that, you notice how he said he wants to give $1 billion to DHS? Question, everybody. Who works under DHS also? Department of Homeland Security. 3-letter word. ICE. Yeah. And we just found out. So given everything I just told you, law enforcement infiltrated by white nationalists. Now, I may not be, I'm not a rocket scientist. I wanted to be one, then I realized I was too stupid to be a rocket scientist. But I'm pretty good at this politics thing, and I was blessed with this thing called common sense. If you give $1 billion to DHS, and there's a bunch of white supremacists tied in law enforcement, and you also want to use money, you want to give money to local police departments and then the state departments, and then you want all those white supremacist departments to collude with one another, who do you think they're going to go after? White supremacists? Have they gone after white supremacists so far, Pete? Nah, I don't think so. So they also go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to add that even with Yang's plan, he says something similar, which is he wants to establish a central site to aggregate statistics on white nationalism, boost the budget for fighting domestic terrorism to match non-military spending on combating foreign terrorism, and invest in nonprofits to help people disengage from white nationalist groups. it's super general, and this is something that a lot of them seem to have in common. They seem to think that giving more money to corrupt intelligence agencies is somehow going to solve the problem at hand. And it's
Well, what's scary about this, and the rest of the plan basically sounds like everybody else's closed loopholes, universal background checks, whatever, whatever. But the scariest part about this is that if anybody understands like what Buttigieg's role is in this entire election, you would be terrified by the fact that this man has not introduced a plan. Did y'all forget? He's not introduced a damn thing. And a lot of people refer to him as the intelligence community's chosen candidate, right? He's clearly been groomed for this. He talks like he's been groomed for this. He has the perfect background. He's a white guy, but he's gay, so they consider him marginalized. He's an officer in the military, or a former officer in the military. He can try and boast that background as well, so that when he's talking about terrorism and counterterrorism, it's supposedly supposed to hold more weight given that he is an alleged authority on the issue. But this sounds like martial law. It sounds like he's preparing the country for martial law. That's literally what it sounds like. I mean, the communication between state law enforcement, local law enforcement, and the FBI is pretty extensive as it is. But it seems like he's trying to create something that would tie them all together eventually. And that's what scares the hell out of me. And it seems like he just is trying to do something. Like that seems like what he's advocating for. It's like, given on everything we just told y'all, how could you think that giving more money to the organization, that the agency that created ICE, which is the department that created ICE, which is the DHS?
Yeah, and I don't know if you're going to continue to read this, but this part is pretty bad too.
Go ahead.
So this is his step for stop the spread of violent extremism online. First, work with social media and other online platforms to identify and limit the spread of hateful ideology.
Okay, that's censorship.
Yep. Social media companies and online platforms have a critical role to play in ensuring that their services are not used to facilitate and spread hate. Federal funding for tech innovation and training should be used to help improve software tools that can help identify and track far-right extremism within the boundaries of the internet company's terms of service and consistent.
Oh my God.
But this part gets a little bit crazier. So he says, name and shame online platforms and other companies that refuse to take steps to curb use by hate groups. And then it goes on to say that certain platforms like 8chan should be regularly monitored by law enforcement.
Which I'm sure it already is, but
he's already giving money. Yeah, he's already giving money to the law enforcement agencies that we already know have connections to white supremacists and these kinds of hateful
the white supremacists and the law enforcement hang out at 8chan every day already. You don't have to worry about monitoring. You know what I'm saying? So
I just thought that's probably the craziest part, because he continually doesn't understand that law enforcement is corrupt.
He is the worst representation of millennials ever. We don't like this guy. Tulsi is the millennial of choice for this president for us. I'm just letting everybody know. Pete Buttigieg is creepy. Understand he's not introduced any plan in the. Remember, because he says that's the problem with this country. Everybody thinking about policies. We need to start talking about, what do you say? Philosophy. Yeah, we need to start thinking about philosophy.
I think the only other plan he had was the mandatory public service.
Yeah.
That was his other plan. So when
martial law and mandatory public service, everybody, and censorship. Three plans.
Release a plan. It's bad.
Every time he's released a plan, it's been authoritarian. Think about that. It has been what the Republicans would call communism, the caricature of communism. Centralize the effort rather than taking meaningful steps. Because like gun violence is a complicated issue, right? We can take the basic steps like universal background checks, like banning assault weapons, like because there's really no reason to be walking around with an AK-47. Like there just isn't.
Oh yeah, this is his favorite line. The Gravel teens love it when he says, what is it? Weapons like the one I carried in Afghanistan have no place on our streets or in our schools, least of all in the hands of white nationalists. Okay, then get them out of the hands of certain police officers and
right. Police officers, unless you're SWAT, you shouldn't have an assault rifle. Hell, there's a good argument to be made that you shouldn't even have a pistol loaded with actual bullets, because 90% of the time you can get the job done with rubber bullets. I don't know if you ever been shot by a rubber bullet. That hurts. You get shot in the leg by a rubber bullet, you're not walking. Like, you're not getting up. I'm not even joking. People think, man, my shit's a rubber bullet. It feels real when it hits you. I promise you it does. And you live to tell the story about how much it hurts, so nobody else does the same thing. But I mean, how many police killings have been legitimate in the last 10 years? Right? It's different if you're conducting an assault on a drug, kingpin. That's a whole different situation. But basically, we know what this money is going to be used for. And it's not going to be used for counterterrorism. It's going to be used for the same thing that Obama's infuse an influx of money into the law enforcement was used for. They literally pulled out tanks in Ferguson, bruh. They pulled out tanks. You think they go? No,
Yeah, I mean, it just shows you how out of touch he is with the reality of the intelligence communities, or maybe he does know and he just doesn't
Oh
care.
no, it shows you that somebody's writing his plans for him, and he's doing what the hell he's told to do. So leave your likes. Please like the video, share this for the love of God, because I'm tired of all this like random Pete love that I see. Well, he's not that bad. Yeah, he is. He's horrid. He is horrid. So like, comment with your thoughts below, and always remember, more than anything else, people, find your balance. Peace.
Hey, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification button to get all of our notifications if you like that episode of Mikasa Sukasa. You can also help continue to grow our show by donating to our Patreon and helping us hit our goal of 500 patrons. But remember, more than anything else, find your balance. Peace.